After surviving the console wars of the 1990s,
The Bit War veterans are invading your podcast
to bring you gaming intel
and old tales.
Together, we are your hosts, Max Inventory
And Meow Tay Ching.
and we are
The Bit
War Veterans! Hello and welcome to another exciting, long-awaited episode. We have returned from our epic trip to Japan, the gaming mecha land.
That was on my bucket list, and I could finally cross that off. And it was so good, we're gonna go there again.
And we're gonna try and live there in the future.
We had a great vacation in Japan, and then we also swung back to the United States and visited some friends and family there. But this episode is all about Japan, because that's what you want to hear about.
Sorry for the delay. Once we returned from our vacation, I immediately had to go do field training. Then I got pretty darn sick from that. Came back, was out for like a whole nother week. But guess what? I had another mission I had to go out to. So then I left and did that. And now finally I'm back. Things have cooled down a little for about 2 weeks and I'm going back out to more field training.
So we have to get this podcast episode done.
We have to get this knocked out for you lovely people.
So this is our Japan Spectacular Extravaganza episode. We visited Tokyo for a total of 8 days, was that?
8 days a week.
8 days a week. And we spent our entire vacation there in the city of Tokyo, where we did a lot of really cool things. Of course, we went to Akihabara. We went to a ton of different arcades. We went shopping. We visited many different districts of the city. We're going to tell you all about it.
We're going to give you a rundown of our experience with the arcades and the retro gaming stores. And a couple other little tidbits, like some video game themed cafes we went to.
We ate, slept, and breathed video games while we were there in Japan.
Pretty much. And if it were up to me, I probably would have just stayed in one arcade and slept outside till they opened up again and spent all of my money there. Which I almost did anyways. So let's start at the beginning.
So the flight there is really short from Incheon to Tokyo, about 2 hours. So we landed and we took a bullet train from Narita Airport into Tokyo, which was really cool. It's my first time on a bullet train. Super smooth, super fast. Highly recommend it. And we had an Airbnb there, which I honestly didn't know how close we were to Akihabara. We were within walking distance, maybe like a 20-minute walk from our little Airbnb to, the downtown Akihabara, and that was so cool. I realized we were gonna be somewhat close, but I didn't realize it was only a short walk. And that was like, oh my god.
It turned out to be the perfect little base of operations. So, once we got settled in, we went to our very first arcade that we came across while walking.
It was kind of funny because we were completely blown away by everything inside of this arcade. And little did we know that this arcade was actually pretty small compared to all the other ones we were to visit, like, the big Sega and the Taito Stations and things like that.
And that's what it was. It was a Taito arcade that did turn out to be probably the smallest, at least dedicated arcade building that we went to.
Yes.
And everything in it, we were just caught in the shock and awe of how different, how modern, how updated this was compared to anything we had had growing up.
And even compared to arcades here in Korea.
That's true, which I expected a lot more from Korea, to be honest.
Yeah, well, they're neighbors next door. Arcades are alive and well in Japan. I know there's a lot of places in the United States where the best you get is like an old machine in the back of a pizza place. If you're lucky, maybe you do live by a bar arcade or something like that, but there's arcades everywhere in Japan. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Dave and Buster's has a couple of hits here and there, but kind of a lot of junk games.
There's nothing in the world like this.
No, there's not.
I'm dead serious. Like,
there's not.
The whole time I was there, I'm thinking, there's literally nothing else in the world quite like Japan.
And the Koreans, well, they like their PC cafes. That's what really took off here, and they've stuck to that as well.
Right. And Tekken. Oh my gosh. Tekken.
Yeah, you swear it's the only game they play here. So anywho, we're just walking around through this I call it the little Taito, because it ended up being the smallest one. Just amazed at everything we're seeing, right? Taking it all in, exploring these games we had never heard of. So we finally work up the nerve to sit down and try this game called Soul Reverse by Sega. We put the money in, pressing all the buttons, and the game is not starting. We're trying to figure out what are we missing.
So we put more money in the game, and we're like checking the bottom of the arcade
Are there
cabinet.
hidden buttons?
We're touching everything, thinking of every combination to get this game to start, and it just won't start. We're very frustrated.
I grab a nearby employee, and I explain to him as best I can, as simple as I can, that I put the money in the machine and I can't get it to start. How do I start? And he finally figures out what I'm trying to say. Oh, start! And the man touches the screen, and the game started. And my brain then melted out and oozed out of my ears.
Yes. Almost all of the arcade games in Japan, minus some of the old and classic ones, are touchscreen.
I'm sorry, I'm a caveman from the 90s, and we don't touch the screens where I'm from, okay? If you're listening to this and you've played these games and you think I'm retarded, well, yes, I am. I'm sorry, I'm just a man from the past. It didn't even cross my mind to touch the screen, okay? Do I feel stupid? Yes. But after that, we had a good time.
Yeah, so just to make it clear, there are touchscreen options and things when you navigate menus, but there are buttons and control sticks and, various things. It's not just like completely touchscreen.
Although there are a couple of games that are completely touchscreen.
Yes.
But nevertheless, most of these have touchscreen integrated along with buttons, analog sticks, guns, whatever the heck.
Yeah.
And Soul Reverse turned out to be a wild game. It was kind of like Dynasty Warriors on steroids.
Yeah, now, when I was playing this, I kind of realized that not only was I playing the game, like, by myself, but no, these are actually networked. That you could be playing these arcade games with someone else in the arcade, and also other people in other arcades. So it's kind of like almost like an MMO experience in a way.
They are. A lot of these games are online.
Right, online. Another thing is the arcades in Japan have a card system. So you insert money into a machine and you get an arcade card. And there's different brands of these cards that you could use. And these cards are good for saving your progress in these games, because a lot of the games are like RPGs or have RPG elements where you need to save your character and you need to save your progress. So that's how you do that.
So on the back of the card, there is a site that you go to and you register and create an account, register to an email, and then boom, you're able to use this card on the different games, save your progress, save your preferences, whatever. Even simple music games where you think there's really nothing to it, it still allows you to save progress, save scores on tracks and whatnot. It's really evolved beyond a point that I was aware of going into this. And we probably should have researched it maybe a little more before going in, but
we figured it out.
Hey, we figured it out. I even set up my own card, I think on a Bandai.
I think
Bandai card.
We had a Bandai card and a Konami card, because the thing is,
I only made an account for one.
Because the thing is, there's usually multiple card systems for these arcades, and certain games will take certain cards, and other games will take other cards, or a combination of certain cards, but not other ones too. So you kind of have to pay attention and attempt to figure this all out, because we don't know Japanese.
We're trying.
Attempting. Nihongo dekimasen.
Soul Reverse, like many games that we ended up playing through our time here, has a tutorial section. So there's another incentive to have the card and to save your progress, because you don't really want to play this tutorial bit, which could last 15, 20 minutes on some of these games I've played, just teaching you how to play the game and all the different things going on.
Yeah, a lot of these newer arcade games in Japan are very, very complex. So when you're playing it for the first time, they will walk you through a tutorial. And that's why you want to save your progress, because I swear that tutorial took like a half an hour to go through.
And then continue to play after that in this huge battlefield setting, like Meow said, with other players against other players and a whole lot of NPCs.
Yeah, so it was similar to Dynasty Warriors, where you pick where you want to spawn on the map, and there are certain control points you have to take, and you're fighting certain players from other arcades. There's also like NPCs or bots, you might call them, fighting with you and fighting against you as you take these control points. And you take certain points and like you could cause a boss to spawn or just a lot of different things. And there are different classes you could pick from.
Right.
And what I saw a lot of Japanese people were doing was customizing their characters. So you could unlock weapons, you could gain points to get different costumes.
Oh, there were skill trees, yeah.
Yeah, like
it was crazy.
It is an entire game. And so when you pay to play it, you know, there's a certain time limit. I don't remember what the exact time limit was.
No, but we played for a while.
Yeah, at least a half an hour to 45 minutes on the money we put in. So I feel like the amount of money we were spending to play these games was worth it for the most part.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's how they do it over there. When you're playing these really complex kind of MMO, RPG kind of games, you pay for the time. If you die, it doesn't matter. You just keep going until you run out of time.
And so while we're at Little Taito, we also played a couple other games we're familiar with, like Mario Kart. It had like 4 to 6 of these cabinets together. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I think it was 6.
But there was only 2 of us playing, so.
Well, yeah. But there was a group before us that was playing like all of them. I'm like, wow, I kind of wish we had more friends there to play with. But that's all right. We raced each other. That's probably the newest, Namco partner they do with.
Yes, because I've played the older ones before too, but they
weren't
was
as good.
Newer one. Yeah, the newer one's a lot better.
The drifting was really good. They actually had more items to use.
Yeah, and a couple of characters that you weren't able to play in Mario Kart games. Like, I think you could play as, what was it, Pac-Man and a few others.
I actually don't remember
yeah.
at this point, but that's all right.
That's okay, because
it's Mario Kart.
It's Mario Kart, yeah. There were some other really fun games there, including a train simulator game.
Now, this was an entire cabinet, a whole box. And every place we went to, it was the same. There was never any like smaller version or anything like that. This was
a large,
this is
large
intended
game. Yes.
to be this experience where there's like 3 giant screens all next to each other that really make you feel like you're in the cockpit or the the engine room, of a train.
Now, what we thought was absolutely hilarious was on the outside of this arcade cabinet, they had a train conductor uniform hanging up on a hanger.
To be fully in the train conductor experience.
A complete simulation, including the train conductor uniform.
I didn't put on the jacket.
No, I was too embarrassed.
I don't know. I didn't want to feel like I was disrespecting it or something. I don't know.
I felt like I had to be better at the game in order to even put it on.
That too.
That game was, once again, a touchscreen. It did take us a minute to figure it out. I mean, there's a lot of levers and things, and we're like, well, how do we get this one to start? Wait a second. Touch. Oh, there we go.
And then that screen, once the game started, that little touch panel had a lot of dials and gauges on it for the train.
Yeah, I didn't know what they were.
I don't know what they are.
But we figured out the very basics.
And other physical switches, too.
Yes, so, you have your little lever that controls your brakes and your velocity. And the game, I'm not going to lie, I was very surprised by how much fun I was having with it. Because, you take off from a subway, and it had the maps of Tokyo in it.
I'm pretty sure this is modeled on reality.
I mean, this could probably be used as a training device.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, that's how involved it was. But we picked the easy course. And you take off from the subway, and they give you, like, the speed you're supposed to be at for taking certain turns.
Yeah, there's, like, markers along the way.
Right, so you have to try to match your speed with that, either accelerating or using the different braking options. And you're also being timed, so you have to make these stops on time, much like the Japanese train system, which is very, very punctual.
And when it comes time to get up to a platform, you'd better stop right on that line. You can't stop just a little before it, and they give you a break. Because we found that out the hard way. Stopped a little early, thought the train would kind of ease forward into it. No, it didn't. And then the round didn't end. The clock was still ticking, and I was like just trying to inch the train up to the red line.
It's like gas, brake, gas, brake, gas, brake. Oh, we won! Yay!
And like on the other screens, they show the doors opening up and the people getting in. Mm-hmm. It was pretty wild.
Right, because, in Japan, when the subway stops, there's like 2 sets of doors. There's the subway door that opens, and then these other little station doors that open. So you have to be lined up, or else people aren't going to be able to get on your train.
That's right.
So that was the train conductor game.
Surprisingly complex and yet relaxing.
It was
peaceful.
very relaxing.
It was a sweet game.
I liked it.
Plus, when you're in that cabinet, it's completely enclosed, and it really helps cut you off from all the extraneous noise of the arcades and the people, which can be overwhelming at times.
Oh, yeah. Actually, there was a Japanese man who saw us playing the game and, stopped and watched us,
Probably laughing internally.
Maybe. Or maybe he was surprised to see, foreigners.
We were doing it.
Foreigners were interested in this, and they were actually playing it decently.
It was also, from what I remember, maybe a little expensive to play.
Yeah.
Or one of the pricier games,
It was.
Like $5 a pop or something.
Yeah.
Or a 500 yen coin.
Yes.
Or whatever. I don't remember. And then I came across this amazing game by Square Enix. Never heard of. We'll probably never see it on consoles. And it was amazing. The most amazing mech game I've seen, called Starwing Paradox. You've got to YouTube this. Google it. Whatever.
Fly to Japan and play it.
Or just fly to Japan and try it out.
Mm-hmm.
This cabinet... Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a cabinet, but you have your mech cockpit seat. You've got your joysticks with buttons. You've also, guess what, got a touchscreen panel on your side, and the whole thing moves, lights up with your mech movements. You got speakers in the dang chair, under the chair, I don't know, in front of the chair. It's all blaring surrounding you.
Yeah.
It's probably the most I've ever felt like I was really piloting a mech, a Gundam thing, a giant robot suit. It was fantastic, and the game was fast and furious, was also networked with other games online, and I also had to go through about a 15-minute tutorial.
Yeah.
Once you get through it, very cool. I can only imagine the possibilities with it in terms of picking the characters, I don't know, leveling up, whatever progressions they have in there. But it looks fantastic. It plays incredible, and later on, we end up finding out, because at this little Taito, there's only two Starwing Paradoxes. I thought that was great.
But little did we know that Starwing Paradox is super popular.
It's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So we'll tell you about that very soon. The next day, we went to Akihabara. This was our first full day in Japan, so we were like, okay, let's do as much arcade and video game stuff as possible today. So we started off the day by walking down the street. And as you get closer and closer to the heart of Akihabara, you see more and more video game and anime stuff. So we started off the day by entering one of the first video game stores we saw.
And many other hobbies and interests.
Yes.
And lots of maid cafes.
Yeah.
But just don't. It's cute, but weird.
So our first video game store we went to was a retro game shop.
I believe it was called the Games Dungeon, or Game Dungeon. And they had 2 stores. There was one that went down and another one right next to it that
went up.
Was flat and had another floor above.
Yeah, so that one was pretty cool. Now I have to warn people who are interested in traveling to Japan. There are many, many game stores there. You will enter the first game store and you'll be completely blown away by their selection and by how absolutely pristine a lot of these old games are. Even in box. And you'll want to spend all your time and all your money there. But don't, because there are so many other game stores. That's just the one thing I would put out there, is don't spend all your time and money in one store, because there's a lot to see. And you will run out of time, and there will still be...
And money.
And money. And there will still be so much more that you didn't get to see.
And you can do price hunting between at least 3, 4, 5 different stores within walking distance of each other.
Right.
But let's start with the Games Dungeon.
The Games Dungeon.
Blown away as soon as we went in. And these stores, particularly this one and Super Potato, they're almost like museums in a way. They have really good presentation. Everything is pretty well meticulously kept and cleaned and wrapped in plastic or shrink wrapped.
And even some of the really expensive and rare things were put in plastic cases.
Oh, yeah.
Like hard plastic cases.
You'd swear some of this stuff had never been used before. So I feel like here in the States, I'm like lucky when we see a used game and let's say Super Nintendo, and it has the box with it. And the box is all crinkled. There's, paint chipped off of it. Maybe you have the manual and it's like, wow, that's great. But here, you'd swear it was never used before.
Yes, people take very good care of their retro game merchandise, and the stores, every single retro game shop we went into, there were people working there behind the counter with cleaning supplies and alcohol swabs and, Q-tips, and they were meticulously cleaning every single cartridge that was coming into the store.
I mean, they had Famicoms in box that looked
brand new,
barely used.
Yeah.
Yes, with the foam and everything. We were sucked in and almost set on spending a lot of money there, just right off the bat, because we just felt so surprised by how much was there, ranging from old to new. Third-party stuff, first-party stuff, obscure stuff, controllers from every era, consoles just laid out, almost convincing me to take them home like a Japanese Saturn. I would love to have a Japanese Saturn. How about a Japanese Dreamcast?
And I think they even had a couple of rare things there.
They certainly did.
I remember seeing a portable PC engine there in box.
Yes.
And I think they also had some wacky third-party controllers for the various train games for different consoles.
They did. They had Neo-Geos.
Oh yeah, all types of Neo-Geo consoles. Neo-Geos aplenty.
And because they're so expensive to collect for, I think I'm okay with emulating Neo-Geo, but that is something that I have always been drawn to. Love their arcade games. As you know, we've been doing the Neo-Geo mini series on YouTube. And if you haven't, you should probably go check that out.
Shameless plug.
Bitwar Veterans on YouTube. And we found this little poor old yellowed Dreamcast that was definitely on the bottom of the price chart there.
I think it was only around...
It was like 40 or $50. And oh man, I almost took it home.
It must have belonged to a smoker or something. This thing was...
Oh yeah, you'd see them range. They'd have the dirtier, dingier consoles, which were still cleaned and wrapped in plastic and looked good. I'm sure they worked fine. But for whatever reason, their outsides had that yellow factor going on. Like some of the old white or gray Saturns, they'd have those, the Super Famicoms.
Yeah, the discoloration
or
something.
Ones.
I don't know.
And the price ranged. The nicer it looked, the higher it went. But most everything was fairly reasonable. The loose Famicom cart games, the Super Famicom cart games, shelves of PlayStation 2, PlayStation. Not a whole lot of Xbox.
Oh, no. Xbox.
Japan does not really care for them.
But Mega Drive games, all types of PC Engine games.
It was so hard not to come home with something. Okay. But we did end up buying a third-party GameCube controller for our GameCube here.
And we bought a VMU for the Dreamcast.
And that was just for fun.
Yeah, just for funsies.
Which was like $8 or something.
Yeah. And just, stacks and stacks of these things.
It was fantastic. But it was only just the beginning. We went to the dungeon upstairs room, or the other store that had 2 floors. And there we saw some different things, where they had more of like the PC Engine card games. By card, I mean the games that came on the cards.
Right. And I remember that one upstairs having a lot more Neo-Geo things.
They did. They took up a lot of shelf space.
They're so big.
The consoles and the box for the cartridges.
And that store was kind of an oddball because they had a really small English section.
They did, which were quite overpriced.
Yes, that's funny. The English games they had there, I remember there being some Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Mega Drive, or Genesis, and, I guess English games are a little bit more of a rarity there, and they were very overpriced.
Yes, I think when we go back, we might have to take some games we got to get rid of and see if they'll buy them.
Oh, maybe.
Make a little trade, going on.
And they even had a PC FX system with the box and everything included for sale. That's definitely a collector's delight.
The giant computer-looking console.
Another thing I would suggest to people who are curious about traveling to Japan is to have a list made up of all the things you really, really want, especially Japanese-only games, because we came kind of unprepared.
Especially if you don't read Japanese, there may be some games that you don't want because you can't navigate or play through them. Like I would love to have, a Japanese, I don't know, Super Mario RPG or something, but why? I couldn't play it.
Right. And there are other Japanese games that are very simple without much text or any text at all, where you'd be able to play it anyways. So I think do come prepared, know what games you want, research some games that are kind of foreigner friendly that you could still play and understand even if you don't know how to read Japanese, because they do exist. And I would say maybe print out a list with the kanji and, the Japanese names so you could go up to someone in the store and ask them for it. Because like I said, all these stores have so many games and it's quite overwhelming. And if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you might end up like us, where we just look at all the things on the shelves and go, oh, pretty. And then we walk out of a store without really buying anything.
It was still fun.
It was so fun. Yeah.
They even had those weird like Bandai consoles, the Playdia. That was a weird little edutainment type console. I'm sure everything for it is really lame, but, would it be neat to have? Maybe. I don't know. Playdia, yeah. Playdia. The quick interactive system. But we really had to temper ourselves and not spend really any money there, because there was definitely more to come. So later on in that day, we also start discovering the massive Sega arcades.
Yes. There are, I believe, 4 different Sega arcades in Akihabara.
At least that we went to.
I think there are a few more outside of Akihabara. I think there's one in maybe like Shinjuku or
I'm
Shibuya.
sure all over Japan, but
right, but just in that area,
our zone.
In our zone, within a few blocks of each other, there are many Sega arcades that are multiple stories tall, and each floor kind of has their own theme to it. Now, most of the arcades, Sega, Taito, independent arcades, the first floor and sometimes maybe the second floor are all crane games.
This seems to be like standard across the board.
Crane games or UFO catchers, whatever you want to call them. They are everywhere. They are usually with like the entire first floor, sometimes the entire first and second floor. But I was amazed because each one of these crane games had their own theme with a lot of unique prizes in some of them.
Sometimes it's just one item.
Yeah. It might be one giant plushie or one really awesome anime figure. And you see people playing them, pumping in the dollar coins.
More than I would expect.
And it's cool to walk through and to see all the different prizes. And after a while, I will say it got kind of boring in a way, kind of expected. Like, oh, okay, let's go to another arcade. Let's just skip this floor.
Well, for sure. We have no real interest in those, so we're almost always just bypassing that first floor, maybe second floor. And then there'll be about 1 or 2 floors of actual games. Then there's usually 1 floor of gambling games. And that'll almost always be the only floor you could smoke on.
Japan is
which I find very makes sense.
Japan is a very smoker-friendly country, so you'll be surprised at all the places where you can smoke.
And it's usually the gambling floor.
Yes.
Or a section within that gambling floor.
So in some of these gambling floors, you would see a lot of virtual mahjong. You would see...
Right, we're not even talking pachinko.
Yeah, no.
These are other gambling games.
Right, we're not talking pachinko at all, because pachinko parlors are their own thing.
Right.
And
virtual horse racing.
Yes, that was really weird, because there's like chairs that are set up, maybe 20 of them, and they're all networked. And they're all in front of this large screen where a bunch of older businessmen are sitting there betting on virtual fake horse races. They're betting their real money on fake horse races.
Well, I don't know how it works, if they can bet real money or if they have to do some workaround with that. I don't know exactly how the gambling laws go or whatever.
But that was just wild to see.
But they're betting something.
They're betting something.
And it might...
and chain smoking.
Oh, yeah. And even just the simple, like, coin... Not necessarily slots, but, like, the games where you put in a coin and you might get more coins.
Yeah.
How do you call those?
I don't... The kind where you, like, push... Where you put in the coin and it pushes more coins at you.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We stayed away from it, you know.
I could get addicted to those, but yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And so on the other actual gaming floors, like Meow said, they're themed or more or less have like a continuity to them. where you'll find like mostly racing games. And then a couple other games.
Or like mostly rhythm games.
A floor of mostly music rhythm games. Fighting games. Or just kind of like that general standard arcade where it could be fighting games, shoot 'em ups, a couple of light gun games, stuff like that. And so there was another Sega arcade we went to they're just numbered. It'll be like Sega 1, Sega 2, Sega 3. And so we go to one of them, and in this particular one, each floor was almost dedicated to one whole game, like I guess for tournaments or because the interest is that great.
So there was one Gundam game that had just come out when we visited.
Gundam Extreme Versus 2.
That was insanely popular.
All over the place.
Yes. A couple of other really popular games you would see all over, like rows and rows and rows of these, would be Fate Grand Order. Really big.
Another moneymaker for Sega.
Mm-hmm. Border Break.
Border Break. I never got around to trying it, but I wanted to. It's another one of these games where you have your analog stick and buttons on the left, and then you had a freaking mouse that was tethered to the arcade that you played with. I really wanted to mess with that.
Then there was Wonderland Wars.
This is another one that seemed to have a lot of steam. Wonderland Wars, and we've got a nice long video of me playing through not only the tutorials, but playing the game for like almost an hour. And you have your analog stick, couple buttons, but then you have a stylus pen tethered to the arcade, and you are swiping it all over the screen. This was some weird kind of mix of like MOBA. It did seem very much like a enhanced phone game.
In a way, yes. I could see how a lot of the swipe controls would be very similar to a phone game, yeah.
And so, yeah, it was kind of like a MOBA / maybe tower defense sort of
tower
type
defense,
game.
Definitely, yeah.
But you pick your character. Again, you could level them up. You go through this extensive tutorial on how to move, how to play. You earn cards that you drag up onto the screen for your special attacks, and it was pretty wild. You drag and swipe, have your character do different moves, attacks,
spells,
abilities.
Yeah, you could like draw out where you want your spell to go with your stylus.
And you play against other characters, both in the arcade and somewhere else in Japan. and you go up through the map with your little set of NPCs coming in waves, trying to take over the other characters' bases, and whoever destroys the other person's base wins. Wild.
Yeah.
And that was off of like a single play, like 500 yen or whatever. Fleet Girls was a game we came across, which I think is an anime as well. Or at least somebody else told us that.
Yeah, that one is
weird.
So silly. It's so silly.
But it's wild because what drew us to it at first is its controls. You've got like a boat, like a ship.
Like a ship wheel.
A wheel,
Yeah.
Captain at the wheel there. And then like a throttle that made me feel like a submarine controlling your depth. But instead it was just your speed.
And you play waifus that... yeah, it's a game of waifus where you pick your waifu and they skid across the water. Yes, they're just like skiing across the water without skis. They're just like magically propelled by waifu power. And you are attacking various enemies ranging from, I think there were like whales to weird sea serpent creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And the game, you pick your character and the game gives you a card, like it spits out a card. And you put the card in a slot and it reads that character. And as you progress through the game, you could win different waifus and the game will give you another waifu card, which you could then add to your squadron of seafaring waifus.
I don't know if you were supposed to give those cards back, but we kept them.
We kept them.
Because we also like leveled up that one character and it spit out another card.
Yeah, it was like a holographic version.
Yeah, it was shiny.
Ooh.
Lithographic or whatever the heck. It was glossy,
yes.
Shimmery. Clearly an upgrade.
Upgraded waifus on the sea.
And it was pretty cool. You're pretty much always in motion and you use the wheel. And it would split screen too and show you what the enemy was doing. And you had like the mini map that you also use to not circumvent, but circle around.
Yeah, you have to like plan your trajectories. It's like you're firing like missiles or something that go underneath the water. So you have to kind of, plan their movement with your movement and your trajectory and try to avoid being in their line of fire. It was pretty fun.
It was really different. I'd never played an arcade game like that before.
Another popular series that you saw quite a lot of would be Final Fantasy Dissidia.
Definitely. Which, isn't that also mobile?
Yes.
So I don't know what you get out of playing that in the arcade versus on your phone.
Probably a better experience, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, I would say. And then I'm going to imagine that you can tie your account and continue playing your characters, your progression, whatever. It looks fun. I don't know. I was too afraid to get into that. And speaking of cards, though, being involved with the game, there were these weird, straight out of imagination card games where the arcade had a matte tablet pad, more like a pad instead of its controls, and it had cards that you purchase and they interact with the game. You lay them on the pad and they show up and do things in the game. And we saw different varieties of this too, from sports games to some kind of combat games to there was this whole like army game where this guy was moving his cards and they were like units of troops that were moving in real time on the screen.
Yeah,
this was baffling.
Yeah, don't think of it like a trading card game because this was.
And they weren't playing Yu-Gi-Oh.
No, I mean it was action oriented. So you would lay out your cards on the bottom. It might have even been touchscreens. You lay out your cards on the bottom, and you would be constantly moving them around. People would bring in their own decks of cards that they bought. So I'm guessing that those are different units, different characters, different upgrades and whatnot.
And we saw some vending machines for like the booster packs and that.
Yeah, so this is definitely a really new concept for me, just being able to play your cards down on the arcade cabinet and, you'd be moving them around with your hands. You'd be touching the screen. Some of them also had other various controls that you could do outside of just moving your cards around. Once again, it seemed very complex. And if I was more fluent in Japanese, I would like to have tried it, but since I didn't know how to do all that stuff, I just watched people play.
It was wild. And we came across some slightly older ones, but still new to us. One called Gunslinger Stratos, which is a great combination of style and function, where you've got two light guns. They've got analog sticks in place of where the hammers would be on these pistols. And the guns can be combined in two different configurations to where you do special moves or it changes your gun type. And each character has their own flair and flavor. And it was pretty fun. No touchscreen on that one.
Yeah. So imagine if you're dual wielding pistols, and depending on how you hold your pistols together
and move them
together, they would do different attacks. So you might you might be shooting them next to each other, and then you could stack them on top of each other, and they would interlock. There was like
little magnets.
Yeah,
and slots.
They were kind of magnetic in a way. So you could like interlock them either like on top of each other or side by side or kind of like crisscross in a way, and that would make you do different special attacks.
Yeah, like you flare your hands out to the sides or up and down really fast. It made you do, jump and melee and do all kinds of things. And there was buttons on the guns too that allow you to move around. Fantastic game, Gunslinger Stratos. There are some other classics we've seen before, like the Luigi's Mansion arcade cabinet, which was really cool. We were able to play that on Dave & Buster's, and we beat that. Mm-hmm. So we kind of skipped it here.
We also saw they have a new House of the Dead.
House of the Dead, is it 4 or something? But they just call it House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn.
Yeah, House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, which was pretty cool.
The graphics are cool.
The graphics are cool, and the voice acting is so cheesy.
But in now the self-conscious way, the self-aware way, not like the first game where I don't think they realized how bad it was.
It was totally tongue-in-cheek.
It was super cheeky. In not only just the acting, but the way the dialogue was written and the events going on. But that actually made it really fun. It had these really cool Uzi guns that had really good feedback. It was a fun game. And at that Sega arcade, they had one whole floor for Starwing Paradox.
I mean, there was at least, 30?
Somewhere between 20 and 30. I would say.
And they're pretty massive.
Oh, they're huge.
Yeah. And it's just an entire floor of these things set up.
I can only imagine how awesome a tournament or just any kind of competition would be there.
And then there were these other Gundam games there.
I think they're a little older, but it's the battle pod style.
Where you go into a round pod, you open the door and you go in, and the screen is kind of like an IMAX screen.
Yeah, it's a projection.
Yeah, it's a projection, and it's rounded, and it surrounds you almost maybe 3/4 surrounding you.
Yeah, it's pretty wide and pretty tall. And you sit down, of course. And I've seen this before with the Star Wars battle pod.
Yeah.
So it was kind of similar in that way, but playing this, again, networked with other people in the arcade and who knows, other people in Japan, because I'm pretty sure there was more people in that game than there were in the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
It was a blast.
Yeah, didn't that one have, like, you had different
It had a lot of controls.
Yeah, like pedal controls. You had your controlled board in front of you. You had your your 2 sticks. There was another little
Buttons all over
side.
them.
Wasn't there like another little side screen?
There was not a side screen, but there was a side panel where you can plug in headphones and a microphone to communicate with other people.
Okay.
Wild. The only thing I don't like about those battle pod games, the Star Wars one and this one, is it's just that with it being a projection, the screen is just not super sharp, or the image, I mean, is just not as sharp as looking at a screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a monitor, I should say.
Right. The colors could kind of get washed out.
But it was still a blast. You're completely surrounded. Again, I feel like I'm, piloting this thing, and surprisingly did all right. And again, although this is a little older, we hadn't seen it before and ended up discovering it when we went back to the States. It is Darius Burst EX.
This is a side-scrolling space shooter.
You're probably familiar with the Darius games. They've been around for a while. And this is taken to that next level. It's a really wide cabinet with like 2 wide screens together.
Up to 4 people could play it together. And it's like the entire thing is a giant subwoofer. It was so loud and just the entire thing was shaking. But the gameplay is so smooth and very, very creative because you could switch the direction of your ship. So instead of flying forward to the right forever, like many side-scrolling shooters in that genre have you do, you could switch your direction, and sometimes the enemies will come from the different directions. You could switch that. That definitely changes up your style when you're beating bosses and things like that. And when you play with more than one person, you're able to combine your attacks sometimes. Like you build up a special gauge, and the more people that play, the crazier your attack combinations can be. And the soundtrack to that game is amazing.
Yes, and it could really hook you in, especially because it starts off not super challenging. But we've played through the whole game, and it is, wow. It gets really rough and wild by the end of it. The entire screen gets filled.
Mm-hmm.
Bullet hell. Bullet
hell, yes. And since the screens are so large and wide for this, the boss battles are just on an epic proportion.
They are. They're pretty massive and have
a million trillion hit points.
A million hit points, but a lot of movement, different forms. They really take advantage of the double wide screen. They really do.
And everything is like kind of nautical themed. So you're in space, fighting against these giant like robot sea turtle things. I mean,
sometimes it was,
or serpents or squids.
Yeah.
Like everything seemed very nautical themed.
Like you're in a space aquarium.
Yeah.
Now that one was at Taito Arcade, the games made by Taito, and they also had pretty much all the Darius games there, and that was a blast too. Seeing like the evolution of Darius. Actually, I think that was at Hey Arcade, which even though it's called that, it's still owned by Taito. I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe it was bought by Taito or something. I just don't know why they had Taito arcades, several of them everywhere. But then there's Hey Arcade, owned by Taito. This is kind of funny.
So next, let's talk about all the really awesome rhythm games we played, and music-related games too.
More like all the awesome music and rhythm games that we watched people play, because we either had no idea what was going on or didn't have the
chops,
the temerity,
the tenacity,
the chutzpah to even try.
So we're wondering, Where's DDR? We wanted to play some DDR. And, I guess DDR is a thing of the past, with the arrows. No. They got something better. Like, the entire dance floor is like a pressure-sensitive LED pad.
Konami has evolved DDR into what is called Dance Rush Stardom. And yes, the whole floor gamepad is a touch panel LED epilepsy fest.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And there was no way I was going to try and play that.
No. I mean, I'm pretty terrible at DDR. I know you used to be pretty good, but...
Pretty good, like I can get a C on Max 300. Maybe one time I got a B.
It's still way better than me.
I was not that good.
But we saw some guys there that would get off of work in their suit and tie, and they would just put money in the machine and they would dance. And I mean they were dancing.
They were Saturday Night Fever in that thing.
Yeah, like they had moves and they were jumping and they were like spinning midair. Like this was their thing. They got down and it was just so fun to watch. And then
killing it.
And then the floor is different colors. So as you're dancing, it's lighting up and it's like all rainbowy and they have like ripples and stuff. It's really cool to watch.
It's impressive. You really are putting on a show. But that's what I could barely wrap my head around and kind of understand. Then we started going into the territory of just, I don't know how anyone processes this information and reacts to it. There's a game called My. That is a ring with buttons, hard buttons. And in the center of the ring, it's kind of like a big watch. Is a touchscreen.
I thought they looked like the front-loading washing machines.
Almost. Right, yeah. Or like the old big watch face or something. There's a combination of hitting these buttons around the ring and doing swipes and taps on the screen with the music. And we saw like this group of 2 or 3 people that were, picking the same songs. And they were just killing it.
They would put on their little arcade gloves. They were so serious.
Oh, yes, there's gloves.
Yes. And... it's really awesome to see 2 people or 3 people do a song in unison, and they're playing it at a very hard level. Yeah, it was absolutely amazing to watch people play that at like such a high level, being in sync like that. I don't know how much money they had to put into this machine to get to this level of practice and mastery. It was really fun.
You're gonna have to go to youtube.com/BitWarVeterans to see video of this.
There were other rhythm games, too.
So they had the music-based games that were tied together. One was a drum set, one was guitar. I don't know. I think these might have also been made by Konami.
I mean, they were similar to Rock Band. So, like, the concept wasn't that new or mind-blowing, but it was fun to play.
And it was different.
I think it was a little bit more challenging than that. Than like Rock Band would have you play, because I mean I did play quite a bit of Guitar Hero and Rock Band back in the day. It was funny because I tried the drummer one and I picked easy and it was too easy, so I went up to medium and it was way too hard for me.
Yeah, my problem with those games is we can both play instruments, and the thing is when you're restricted to the game of reacting to the hits on sight, it's different than how you would actually play the song, and so that just completely screws it up for me. I can't do it. But it was fun to try and make a fool of myself.
There were also piano games there. I didn't play it, but it is like a 88 key piano. I believe 88 keys, maybe a little bit less.
I don't know. Because then when we touched some of them, like they weren't individual keys. They were like sections.
They weren't individual keys, but it was like the size of what looked like a full piano, maybe. But like, there would be like 2 or 3 keys kind of stuck together, and it was another rhythm game.
It was madness seeing some of these people play.
So fast.
They're just slamming away. Bum, 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 bum. There was U-Beat, this game that was cubes, or at least the buttons were a series of cubes, like a grid.
Like a 3x3 grid.
And you pick your song. There's a screen that displays in the cubes.
Yeah, each little square of that grid had its own screen in it. You would hit the square when it would light up, and of course there'd be different combinations and patterns that you'd be doing to the beat of the music.
For instance, like one would light up, you'd hit it, and then you'd have to hold it as it would shoot a line across the other ones, and when it hit the opposite end of the cube, you'd hit that one. I don't think I'm describing this very well, but there's times you had to hit multiple cubes at the same time. That one was kind of weird to get my head around. We played this really fun one that I don't think we had the name of, where the whole thing was a touchscreen.
It was kind of like a tabletop touchscreen game, and it was rhythm-based. It really, really, really reminded me of Elite Beat Agents for the DS, but imagine you're touching the screen with both hands or fingers at the same time, where, you could touch it to the beat. You could do different swipe motions or like follow this ball as it rolled along, and you have to follow the path with your hand.
Yeah, the simplest parts would be like these rings would appear and then these balls would jump into the rings, and you have to hit it, like with the rhythm as the balls jump in the rings. There's, like you're saying, there'd be a ball, you press it, you hold it and move it along a track, but at the right speed to hit the end point of the track with the beat. There'd be symbols for swiping up and down. I felt like if we were being watched playing this, that the people there would be kind of be giggling that we were playing like a child's game. It seemed like the simplest music game they had there, if that makes any sense. Like, haha, that's for children, and you can barely play that. Because all the other games seem so intense and involved beyond that. There was a couple of rhythm games that I looked at them and I was like, I don't even know what that is. I don't even know. And I thought Beat Mania by Konami long time ago, where you had like the DJ disc and the different buttons. I thought that was wild. And they've taken that to another level too, where you have that plus foot pedals and all kinds of stuff. It was mind-blowing. The music and rhythm games in Japan are nuts. And if you like that stuff, you could spend all day in there. Word of warning, when it's busy and we walk by some of those areas, people get sweaty.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be expected.
And the music rhythm sections of the arcades were kind of stinky sometimes. I mean, not in an awful way. Of course, it's not like the smell of poop or something, but, BO. General BO in the air.
That was just for the very busy rhythm sections. I'd say outside of that, everything was super clean in those arcades. They took cleanliness very, very seriously, because you would see stations set up where you could get hand sanitizer and hand wipes. And
like everywhere.
Yeah, and even in the Sega arcades, they even had their own packaged hand wipes you could take for free with Sonic on them with the Sega brand, which was cool. I took a couple extra home.
We may have a couple.
But yeah, cleanliness, all the arcades are very, very clean. They're kept up well. There's very, very few machines that I saw that were out of order. And anything we've played, the controls worked well. There was good feedback. Nothing were like, oh, this control stick is janky. Nothing like that. They're very well taken care of and maintained.
And many machines have baskets by them, because many people are walking around. They got jackets. Mm-hmm. The arcades are a little warmer, especially when you get more full people, or in some of these dancing games where you take off your shoes. So they have baskets where you put your stuff. And I thought that was nice. And
some of these arcade machines have their own cell phone chargers.
Oh,
or like, USB ports, so you could charge your phone or whatever, and it's built into the actual cabinet, which is really cool.
Make sure you stay there longer.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. And one of the Sega arcades had some couple classics. We played the good old Virtual On, which I remember trying at a friend's house on Saturn, and he actually had the big dual joystick controller.
Ooh. Yeah, and there's always a number of arcade cabinets where, you could sit down and there's a selection of games you could play, all the classics you could possibly think of. So don't think there's a lack of retro arcade games in Japan.
No, and in particular at Hey Arcade, by Taito, they had a whole section of older games. They had Neo-Geo multi-cart arcades. He had like three games or more in one cabinet. It was very nice.
And I liked seeing so many people playing those.
Oh, there were.
And,
and older people, too.
Yeah, a lot of older people.
It's not a young man's game.
No. Yeah, a lot of older people, especially businessmen, would like get off after work and they would come in, suit and tie, and they would just, spend their evening in the arcade. There would be people watching other people play very well. Like it's a very social thing. It's not like just for kids. Just people of all walks of life will be in an arcade at any given time.
And in the busier hours, especially around fighting games, I feel like we almost saw just as many, if not more, spectators than players.
Yeah, in particular, one of the Sega arcades we visited, the very top floor was dedicated to fighting games. And it seemed like this was the place to be if you were like a tournament fighter or a serious fighter, because that top floor, they did allow smoking in the corner.
Yeah.
Like that smoke is only going to stay in the corner, right? But like as soon as you went up there, it was just a very different vibe. Like there were people watching people, taking turns, fighting each other. This one Sega arcade in particular had a very tournament vibe to it, but it was very laid back at the same time. There was no official tournament going on.
No, but it was a blast.
And one of the Sega arcades on the top floor had a bunch of VR games. Unfortunately, you had to make reservations with a group to play those. We did not know this, and it's not like we could really...
So we went up there and went back down.
Yeah, so we went up there and we looked and we're like, oh, dang, we can't play. And we went back down.
And from the pictures, it looked cool. Like the kind where you run around with a VR rifle.
Yeah.
It's probably fun. Maybe we'll get to try it next time. One more final note on Sega Arcade before we wrap that up. Out of the 3 or 4 Sega arcades we went to, one of them, in the tiny, like, 4-person elevator, which is probably like 6 Japanese people, but for me, 4 people at most, elevator, they had a small Sonic the Hedgehog movie poster. Nowhere else in these Sega arcades. You had Sonic, anything else, everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's their mascot, pretty much. He's still all over. So you'd think they'd be advertising this movie.
Nope.
No. That one weird-looking, I have muscle calves, man in a fursuit Sonic poster.
It's like they were embarrassed that was even being made.
Right, almost as if they weren't too proud or excited about it. And I just thought that was funny and worth noting. But wow, that was pretty much just day 2.
Yes.
And we ended up leaving and going to the Walmart of Japan called Don Quixote, or Donkey, and that is absolute madness. Don't go there if you don't have to.
I mean, they pack as much stuff into that store as possible, and it's all vertical. So there's maybe like 10 floors, because, all the shopping malls in Japan are vertical. Same in Korea, pretty much. But this was just madness. The aisles are so tiny. And, like, I was wearing my backpack that day, and I couldn't turn around in an aisle. That's how narrow they were. And from floor to ceiling, it's just stuff. All kinds of stuff. If you could think about it, they probably have it at that store. And it's just madness in there.
I would not say I'm claustrophobic, but when I get put into tight spaces with other people, I do start to feel a little weird. And usually I can handle it pretty well. And that happens a lot in the Army, as they say, nuts to butts. But anyways, being in Japan oftentimes can be cramped, or at least for a big doofy American with a backpack. I could not turn around in a lot of stores. I just had to keep going forward and find a corner or angle to turn to circle back.
We went in there to find...
This store is nuts.
Yeah, we went in there to find like a charger, and
then your body temperature rises along with it because you're just getting hot surrounded by these people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, how long did it take us to find that First, to find whatever floor where they sell electronics.
Mm-hmm.
That was quest number 1.
Yeah, like the first floor was like all grocery stuff and snacks, and I'm like, oh, well, let's
picked
just
up a few things. Sure.
Buy snacks. Yeah, we're in Japan snacks.
Also, you make your purchases each floor.
Yes.
Like pretty much whatever store you go to. Even if it's all one store, you purchase by floor.
Yes, and then like there were maybe 2 or 3 floors of like just... I mean, there was clothing items, there were pillows, there were plushies, toys. I mean, I saw it was like a string of rubber chickens hanging down from the ceiling. Do you want to buy rubber chickens? Well, the store has them. I mean, they had everything. A lot of anime stuff, just...
There was like a little fitness section where they had like protein and some other supplements, and then weird exercise devices.
Yeah.
And one of the funniest things I saw there was a fake muscle suit. You wear it under your shirt, on your clothes, and it had like pads in it to make you look more muscular. And I thought that was darn funny.
Now that's the fitness equipment I could agree with.
That is some Star Trek Season 1 stuff right there.
Yeah, so like I swear we were in that store for like 2 hours before we actually found what we needed. And like by the time we were done and we exited the store, I was like, I'm tired. I'm just tired of just being around so much stuff and so much people. Like Japan, especially Akihabara, could be a complete sensory overload.
Oh, absolutely. These stores are also most, if not all, 24 hours. So I'm guessing we just went at the wrong time.
I guess.
Because it was jam-packed.
It was jam-packed.
And,
but
I mean, it was too much. Yeah, it was like I needed to be alone in the entire state of Texas by myself for just like 20 minutes to detox or shoot me in the vacuum of space for a little bit. So I just needed to be away from people.
So one of the last places we went that night was Container, the Neo-Geo store. And that is a specialty shop in Akihabara that is all SNK Neo-Geo related things in there. Now, they didn't sell video games, but they sold a bunch of really cool merchandise.
And they were selling the Neo-Geo minis, which also we had seen around. Even the limited edition holiday bundle.
Yeah, so this SNK store had a bunch of really cool merchandise. Do I dare say like designer kind of merchandise in a way?
There's designer prices.
Designer prices, yes.
You could blow a lot of money here if you like SNK stuff.
Yeah.
And I do. And it was hard not to.
I mean, they had really cool shirts, really cool hoodies, and some of them come in Neo Geo looking cases, which is really awesome.
Yes.
And we ended up picking up a really cool Neo Geo glass. Like, it looked really good. Like, you could pour a very tasty beer in this glass.
Neo Geo since 1990. SNK.
We also picked up some figurines, and they had Neo Geo Gashapon there. You know, the little machines you get toys out of for like a quarter.
They're not exactly figurines. There's this thing that's there where they're like transparent plastic.
Yeah, it's like the pixel art.
They're printed on.
Yeah, it's like transparent pixel art, but they're cool. They're like little figures.
But yeah, you can put them on stands and display them. They look really nice. We got the Metal Slug tank, and then out of the little Gashapon, the little bubble thing, you got one of the characters. I forget. It's like the female from
Metal Slug,
Metal Slug 3 or whatever.
And there's just a lot of little goodies. I picked up a Neo Geo patch. I like collecting patches.
We got postcards.
Oh, yes.
Like really high quality postcards that cost way too much.
Yes.
But they're nice.
Mm-hmm.
There's posters, t-shirts, banners.
Signed artwork. Art
pins,
art books, just all kinds of things you could think of at this SNK Container store.
Bags, coasters. They had, everything. Trading cards, I think. Just all kinds of stuff. A little pricey. But hey, you find those one or two things you're willing to splunk a little tourist money on. I think it's worth it. This glass is worth it. I'm a pretty practical guy. This is something I can use. It's something that's going to look good for a long time.
As long as we don't break it.
Or wash it too much and destroy the graphic on it.
So that was day 2. Like I said, we tried to squeeze in as much arcade time as possible. So on day 3, we went to Harajuku, which is known as the fashion capital of Japan. I called it Expensive Juku because...
Tourist black hole.
Yeah, all those boutiques in there... like super, super expensive. Just, I don't want to say skip it, but like, unless you have crazy money to blow on fashion.
And if you're really into that.
Like, you're just not going to end up buying anything there unless you're getting some kind of crazy unicorn ice cream cone thing.
Don't believe Gwen Stefani. It's lies. And we came across a little lost in translation there.
Yeah, so I went into a boutique, and I'm looking around, and I see this really awesome jacket. It's really hard to describe, but it was unlike anything I've ever seen before.
Ridiculous. It had like a purple grid. It was black with a purple grid, and it had weird imagery like Intel Pentium processor drone
Like-
shooting a missile or something. Just random weird stuff.
Like really old 3D graphics. I mean, imagine if like, something cyberpunk and like Windows 95 threw up on a jacket. Like that's what it looked like.
It was funny.
Mm-hmm. So
And it was really warm. You put it on, it was thick.
very comfortable.
It was like, okay.
All right, so if I splurge on one thing for myself and get some weird fashion from Japan, I want it to be this. So I look at the price tag and I'm like, $100. Oh, this is $100.
That's what we thought. Because we are used to being here in Korea.
$100 is 100,000 won.
100,000.
So I'm looking at this price tag and I'm thinking, it's in yen. So I'm thinking, oh, this is $100. Well, if I spend $100 on myself on this jacket, that'll be my big purchase. Great. So I take it up and, I say I want to buy it. And the guy working at the store spoke a little bit of English. So we pull out our 100 yen note and we hand it to him.
He looked at me and he says, you need 10 of these.
Yeah.
And then I thought I screwed up. Am I giving him 1,000 yen? Did I miss the zeros? Am I a little tired today? No.
The jacket was $1,000.
Out of your mind.
Yeah, I thought the jacket was $100. Nope, it was $1,000 jacket. So we quickly apologized and left.
And it was barely worth 100. I mean, really, that was pushing it. But we were like, yeah, okay, I get it. We're tourists. It's the touristy era. And we don't normally buy things for ourselves like this.
Yeah.
I would be much more willing to have bought $100 of Dreamcast and Dreamcast games than like a nice jacket for myself.
So yeah, make sure you're converting your numbers correctly because that really threw us. I blame won because
Yes.
converting from dollars to won is one thing, and then converting from dollars to yen is a different thing, and that just threw us off.
And even by day 3, we were still having to resist the habit of responding in Korean.
And then
that was a weird mind flip.
Yeah.
English, Korean, Japanese.
And then by the end of our vacation, coming back to Korea, I have to resist speaking to people in Japanese.
I was saying it in America.
Yeah, bowing to people in America.
Yes.
We also went to the famous Shibuya crossing, but unfortunately it was raining on us that night, and we didn't really have umbrellas with us, so we kind of cut that night short.
Yeah, we ducked into a nice little bar called The Room because we had heard they have jazz music there. But they did not have jazz that night.
They had a
They
DJ.
just had DJs. Which was fine.
Yeah, but they're spinning like some funk and
Played good stuff.
yeah.
There's a little beatboxer there.
Yeah, there was a beatbox.
It was funny.
The next day, day 4, we went back to Akihabara. So on our walk there, you pass up this mall,
So it's like underneath or alongside this bridge.
and it's like a artisan shopping mall called 2K540 Akioka Artisan. And it's a bunch of little shops where you could find some high quality handmade goods, everything from purses to shoes to
Pottery.
furniture, and so
Art.
this is not like the rest of Akihabara where it's all anime and video game stuff. This is like quality made
Craftsmanship.
craftsman
stuff.
project.
Yes,
Yes,
for real.
yes,
At craftsman prices.
yes.
And we came across a shoe. I've been wanting some shoes. And in particular, I wanted something that was Japan shoes. Not Adidas shoes from Japan. Actual Japan shoes. And we came across a store called Spingle Move.
That's a funny name.
What
for
is a
store.
spingle? I don't know. But immediately we like the look of these shoes, and we go in there, and we come to find out these are handcrafted in Japan and made from kangaroo leather.
Yeah, and they were extremely soft and comfortable shoes. Definitely good for walking because you will do a lot of walking in Tokyo.
We do a lot in Korea even.
Yeah, I felt like I walked more in Tokyo, but
Well, yeah, of course. We didn't have a car.
true.
But whenever we take trains to Seoul or to other parts of Korea, yeah, of course, we're walking all the time. So we wanted some nicer, newer, and unique walking shoes, and we ended up walking out with 2 sets of shoes.
And it was nice to know that, all of this stuff was made in Japan. They hand make those shoes, so it's not like some factory Nike's
cookie cutter.
Yeah,
Everybody got it.
So, that was nice to support like a smaller business like that. I liked it.
If you're interested, I don't know if they ship worldwide or whatever, but hey, check out Spingle if you want some neat kangaroo leather shoes.
This is not a paid advertisement.
No.
And then we walked to the Gundam Cafe.
If you like Gundams, you're going to love the Gundam Cafe.
And the cafe had pretty good food. Because it's not just like coffee and cakes and stuff. But, you could order yourself a full meal there.
But it's also entirely themed.
Yes.
So there's stuff from there that I don't really follow Gundam. Haven't seen it in a long time. But, each meal was kind of based off of something from the show. I had a fantastic meal. You had that soup.
Yeah, I had like a clam soup. It was really good. And then...
It was awesome.
When you go to the Gundam Cafe... do stop into the bathroom.
Make sure you go to the bathroom.
And push the red button.
So already Japan has toilets from the future. Let me just tell you that. Some of them have buttons that they'll open up by themselves. Most of them, if not all of them that I came across, the seat is heated, and most all of them have bidet features, and it's wild. They'll even play noises of water or flushing to help cover up your embarrassing noises that you make yourself. But sometimes I get confused at where the flush button is. And I saw this button on the wall. It said power. And I said, hey, why not? Let's push it.
Big red button.
And then the lights went out. And I was like, oh no, what's going on? It's the power for the lights. And then the sound of like engines starting and whatnot start coming up, and the lights slowly come up, and over the mirror is like the top half of a Gundam head with eyes, and it starts to slowly light up. So yeah, it's to power up your Gundam while you're taking a poop. It's pretty wild. You gotta go in there. We actually had a seat by the toilet, and I told Meow, when you go in there, you gotta press the button. So she left, and then I can hear her from where I'm sitting up. I was like, yeah, she pushed the button. It's a good place. They got videos playing on the screens on the walls and art. And then right next to it, there's a little souvenir shop with a bunch of Gundam-related stuff. We bought a cool Gundam soup spoon and a coaster, a nice, like, thick rubber coaster.
We like practical gifts if you couldn't tell.
It's, and it says Gundam Cafe, Akihabara. Really cool. And there's a lot of other neat stuff in there. If you're really into it, you can definitely pick up some neat stuff there.
Then we walked to the legendary, infamous Super Potato.
Super Potato is another must-stop shop if you're in Akihabara, if you're in Tokyo. It's one of the most well-known retro game stores. Again, similar to the Dungeon, but even better. It felt like partly a museum as well as a historical display of things that you may never own.
Things you will never own.
Things you want to own. Lots of money to easily spend. And I was taken aback by their selection.
What I got out of the store is that the people there love video games.
Most certainly.
There are a lot of really cool things that, not for sale, but they had like a giant old Star Fox statue, probably from back when, it was new on the Super Nintendo.
I wish I could buy that.
Right. And they have, each floor had a bunch of, TV screens set up showing retro video games. When we visited, there was like a continual loop of Yoshi's Story song playing. So we got to hear that a million times.
A million.
But, like, there's just a lot of merchandise that is, like, up on display, and you could tell some of the stuff is really old, like, maybe from Nintendo, maybe from Capcom.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see, signatures from various game developers that are up on the wall. Like, this is a place where you could tell that these people love video games.
It's got some history.
Yeah.
It's got personality.
It has a lot of personality. Definitely visit Super Potato.
Lots of Neo-Geo stuff. Wonder Swans. They had the little, the PC Engine GT in the box, which is like, it's like a handheld, but the thing was kind of huge, but it's a really tiny screen. I'm pretty sure it was color. That was pretty wild to see. I've never seen that in person. Remember they had that trance vibrator?
Oh, yeah, for Res.
For Res, for the PS2. MSX. One thing I love, too, is they had whole sections of the Japanese video game strategy guides.
Yes.
That went all the way back to games for Famicom and all the way back.
And they were in very, very good condition.
Wrapped in plastic. Looked like they never freaking been read before.
They also had a section of video game soundtracks. So you could buy a bunch of hard to find and rare CDs. Some of them were the actual soundtracks. Some of them were like the live orchestra performances. And I actually ended up finding the Black Mages Volume 2 and 3 there. And I bought that because I've been a fan of the Black Mages for a long time. So they do the live like metal versions of Final Fantasy music, and Nobuo Uematsu is in there. Hey, so he plays the organ or piano.
If you haven't listened to them, you've got to. Well, particularly if you're a fan of the Final Fantasy music.
And just like all the other game stores, everything is in pristine condition, shrink wrapped. Some of the things are in plastic boxes. It's just amazing to see these collections all together like this. And the store has so much charm, so much history. You could feel the love. If you buy something from the store, they also have a little mini Super Potato comic they give you. Kind of cute, like just some hand-drawn stuff, but still, you could tell. People love that store.
So there's 2 store floors there, full of stuff. Then the 3rd floor, you've got their little retro arcade. Now, this is pretty small, but it's absolutely worth stopping in. Every game was 100 yen, I think. So really cheap to play. And they had a lot of classics there. Again, really, really good condition. There may have been 1 or 2 games we tried where the sticks were a little loose. But otherwise, you had the classic games. They even had the flat, like, table style arcades. Mario Brothers, Bomberman, stuff like that.
In one of the corners of the store, they sold a lot of like inexpensive Japanese candy. So you could go there and arcade and
vending machines
and get yourself some snacks.
Oh, and you walk into the arcade, they had that snake from Metal Gear 3.
Yeah, life-size Solid Snake statue.
I don't know where that came from, but we definitely took pictures with him.
Once again, just a lot of love in this store. You have to go to Super Potato. If there's one gaming store you visit in Japan, make it be Super Potato.
And that was also the day we went to Hey Arcade by Taito, and we've already touched on that. That was probably the most varied arcade that we had been to, where they had the most diverse set of games, both old and new, and didn't have a whole lot of repetitious games. At most you'd see like 4 Initial D cabinets strung together or something like that. So that was refreshing, and it was probably the best variety that we had come across there.
Day number 5 of Japan was Laundry Day. And that was fun because we had to figure out how to use a Japanese washing machine, which it wasn't too difficult.
Yeah, we got that part down, and then I realized, where's the dryer?
Where's the dryer?
How are we going to dry these clothes?
I didn't know this, but dryers are not very common in Japan. So we were at our little Airbnb, by the way, that had the washing machine in it, but no dryer.
And did not have a window to the outside. It's not even really like we could hang dry these clothes or
because most people in Japan will like hang dry their clothes. Maybe you're lucky and you live near a laundromat that has a dryer, but most people don't necessarily own a dryer. That was a kind of an awkward day because we had a bunch of wet clothes and we just had to go and just try to hang our clothes from like the curtain rods and the headboard from the bed and the coat racks in our room and try to dry them that way. So that was an adventure in and of itself.
We were trying to figure out how to just do the spin cycle over again.
Yeah,
that was the best we could do.
I'm like, maybe if we just do a spin cycle.
That was a little adventure.
We got our clothes dry enough and we headed out to Shinjuku, where we visited the Square Enix Artnia Cafe.
This is a cool little place.
The building is shaped like a bean.
Yes, we didn't know that was it right away, and then we got closer. It was like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, a peculiar little building.
And we went on the wrong day.
See, Kingdom Hearts 3 had just come out when we had gone to Japan, and little did we know that the Square Enix Cafe for Kingdom Hearts 3, they had their own little special Kingdom Hearts 3 menu and an event going on, so you couldn't just walk in and sit down and get a table. No, you had to have made reservations online beforehand, shown up to the cafe, and then they pick a random lottery of people to actually sit down and get food.
Right. It was like entering a drawing with a reservation that you may or may not get.
Exactly. So unfortunately, we didn't get to try their food there, but there was at least a gift shop and a lot of really cool things to look at the cafe. So I have a video up on YouTube called What's in the Square Enix Artnia Cafe on our Bit War Veterans channel, and I go through all of the stuff in the cafe. I mean, everything from Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Dragon Quest, The World Ends With You.
Nier Automata?
Oh yeah, Nier, yeah. Pretty much anything Square Enix you could find merchandise for. And you go into a second room there, and it's like a Final Fantasy VII shrine with these really awesome and very expensive play art figures of all the characters from Final Fantasy VII. And they also have this like waterfall coming from the ceiling with materia at the bottom and crystals floating in it. Really cool, nice little setup there.
And they span through all the Final Fantasy games. And I had also seen this packaged at Super Potato, but they were on display here too. They had some Xenogears figures. And if you've been a listener, I've probably mentioned before, Xenogears is one of my all-time favorite RPGs and one of my most favorite PlayStation 1 games. So that was really cool to see a couple of those things that I didn't even know existed.
And while we were there, I found the Black Mages Volume 1 CD.
The only one you're missing.
The only one I was missing, and they had one copy there, which was really awesome.
And amongst all the soundtracks for
Yes.
pretty much every game they ever made there.
Yeah, pretty much any Square Enix game, they had the soundtrack for on sale, which is really awesome. And they also had listening stations, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tons of little merchandise. The trading card game, too, of course.
Mm-hmm. So
really pushing that.
Bring your wallet. You're going to be spending money there.
Especially if you could actually eat. But unfortunately, we were denied that pleasure. So the next day, we ended up making a decision. We weren't going to pick up a Japanese console yet. Especially because we didn't know what games to get for them. Because like we mentioned, we can't read Japanese yet. And we didn't want to end up buying games that were too complex to be able to play without knowing how to read. So we just didn't want to blow a bunch of money that we didn't understand. And understand, too, that in this trip, we were also returning back to the States. So this whole thing had already cost me thousands of dollars. So I just didn't want to go too ham.
Too ham.
I didn't want to go too ham. Or spam.
Yeah, spam is more like it in Japan and Korea.
Yes. I mean, I bought some expensive shoes, and that was like, I normally don't buy shoes that aren't clearanced and cost any more than like $60. That was a big deal for me. But the taxpayers have been good to me, so, we splurged a little bit. So we decided to buy a clone console that we hadn't really known about before coming out there.
It was called the Retro Freak.
Now, this is... back at home in the States, we have the Retrons. That's a big deal over there as far as the clone consoles go. So I want to know, what did this offer any advantage? And actually, I think the company that put out the Retro Freak has gotten a little heat lately, is I think they ended up using open source emulators, which is a no-no. Well, what was neat about this is right off the bat, it has ports integrated into it that will take TurboGrafx / PC Engine game cards.
The PC Engine Super Graphics.
It takes Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance card slot. And the one that we got also had an adapter that will allow you to play Sega Master System games and the different Sega Mark System game cards and Game Gear.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. In addition to having your normal 4 slots that will play Famicom. Not Nintendo, though. You need a different adapter for that because they made the carts different. We'll play Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, Genesis / Mega Drive.
And what else is really cool about this is if you put a cartridge game into the system, it actually pulls the ROM off of that cartridge game.
Which you could then store onto
an SD card.
An SD card. It has an SD card slot. So You don't even need the physical games because you could load ROMs onto the SD card.
Right. So, yeah, you could play ROMs. You could play your actual cartridge games. You could rip the ROMs off of your cartridge games. And you could also play games that you own, like old cartridge games where the save battery has run out because you could save your games onto the SD card.
Yeah, you've got save states. You've also got the ability to download language packs, fan translations for games.
And cheat codes, too.
Cheat codes. I was pretty impressed. HDMI port. Image doesn't get screwed up.
This is a really, really good investment.
And off the bat, it's got 3 USB ports on it. Comes with 1 controller. We bought a secondary USB Super Nintendo style controller. It's been working well so far. There's even an adapter you could also purchase separately that allows you to plug in the original controllers. So I'm pretty impressed with the console so far. And then we had gone to another store that has, surprise, 6 floors of junk. And that included new games and consoles. And they also had retro stuff. And in fact, I thought their prices were some of the better ones of all of them, called Traders. And they even had a nice little bin of like junk, not tested, not guaranteed to work games. Actually, Super Potato had this too. But we decided, hey, what's $2-3 on a game that may or may not work? Didn't matter. And we just bought a couple that we thought looked funny. Traders is where we got the Retro Freak because we went back to the game dungeon and they were sold out.
Yeah.
And I think at Traders, the price was like, I don't know, $5 difference or something like that.
Yeah,
it was a little lower.
Yeah, that's where we got it.
Yeah. So Traders was actually, and I was pretty impressed by what they had there as well. However, Traders had more of the sterile, like, department store, retail chain
I think Traders
feel to it.
Traders is a chain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We saw quite a few of those around there.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have that mom and pop, that love.
They didn't have that potato love.
They didn't have the love of the game. It was more just like love of the business.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way of putting it. Then we took a day off and we visited a bunch of different shrines and parks. So when you go to Japan, there is a lot of nature even within the busy, bustling city of Tokyo. So I highly recommend taking a day off and picking a handful of shrines you want to visit, parks you want to visit, because it's really awesome to see this old architecture.
Oh, yeah.
To see the beauty. We went at the very end of January and early February, so there wasn't a lot in bloom, but it was still very pretty. And I highly recommend you do something, cultural like that.
Yeah, there were plenty of stuff that we did that we're not talking about because, it's the video game podcast. But, went to a little samurai museum, went to some various shrines. We had a whole day where we did nothing but shrine hop.
Do take time off and visit shrines and some other things that Japan has to offer other than anime and video games, because it really is a beautiful, amazing place. And just do take the time out for that.
PSA.
So our 8th day of being in Japan, we went to the Roppongi neighborhood, where we stopped at the Dragon Quest bar.
Called Luida's Bar. Dragon Quest Cafe.
This place was surprisingly high class.
I am not even really a Dragon Quest guy. I've been aware of it, but they didn't even start coming out of the States till like later, and I just wasn't on it. Never got on it. So I've been aware of it. I love Akira Toriyama's artwork, and I just never got into it.
I've played a handful of Dragon Quest games.
Including Dragon Quest Builders.
Yeah, I'm playing that one right now.
And number 2 is set to come out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Or is it already?
No, it's set to come out.
Oh, it's almost okay. Yeah, they were advertising that all over for sure.
So this bar really took me by surprise by their entire presentation, the food, the drinks, everything. Like I said, I felt like this was a little bit more higher class. Like I felt kind of like a slob walking in there with just like, t-shirt and jeans. People were kind of dressed up when they went in there. And everything is Dragon Quest theme off the menu. The food and the drinks there were absolutely delicious. I don't remember the name of the drink I had there, but it was like a sweet and sour alcoholic drink. And I just kept ordering them. They were so good.
The grenadine?
I don't know.
I had the blue syrup, I think.
So whenever you order something, you don't just get the food brought to your table, but there's a whole little shtick with it. And what I mean by that is, they might bring you a drink and they tell you to cast a spell on it as they dump in the shot of liquor to your drink.
Yeah, I had one like that.
Or when I ordered the Dragon Quest Slime meat bean bun, they told me that he joined my party and he delivered it to my table.
Yeah. When he brought my food out, he said the plate was very hot because it had a fire spell cast on it.
Yeah, so everything...
I'm just like, you're sweet, boy.
Yeah, it was so
I mean,
cute.
they picked out the English guy. I mean, the guy who spoke English. He studied abroad. I talked to him a little bit later. He'd studied in California for a couple of years. So his English was probably the best of the staff, and they made sure they stuck him with us. And he did great. He was wonderful.
Yeah, so they do put on a little bit of a presentation whenever you order your food, and just, it was so delicious. I was not expecting this type of deliciousness and entertainment from a Dragon Quest bar in a little random storefront in Roppongi.
It was. Like you said, the steamed meat bun that was like the slime face. They had another one. It was the steamed shrimp mayonnaise bun. I wasn't brave enough to try that one. The smoked turkey leg looked like a video game turkey leg.
Mm-hmm. Like
And they even branded like the symbol into the flesh of the turkey leg.
Like that's definitely going to restore some HP.
Mm-hmm. The gem slime, it was like omelet rice.
Yeah, that's what I got, like the bento.
You had the box thing.
Yeah, it was like a bento. It was like rice and eggs, and they had meat in the center that was shaped like a happy little Dragon Quest slime. And then they cut up hot dogs to look like little octopus. What else did they have? They had some other stuff in there. The whole presentation was just so cute. I definitely want to go back there again.
Which the Gundam Cafe did as well, but I think they did it better here.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe they just had more imagery to draw off of.
There was a lot of charm in Luida's bar.
It was. And it also had this weird setup. And there were a couple other places like this too, where the table actually had a tablet or pad thing that you pumped your order in on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of restaurants in Japan where you do all your ordering via a tablet.
There was one where we sat down and it was just right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you picked what you want, put it on there, and then boop, someone brought it out.
Yep.
Brought you your bill when you're done.
It's like they go out of their way to not bother you when you eat.
Oh, yes. It's not like the States where some server is constantly checking on you.
Yeah, that's what I do appreciate.
You have to
about
call
it.
for help.
Yeah, I do appreciate just kind of being left alone when you eat.
Even here, like the Korean barbecues, they don't mess with you, but they are at least paying attention to when you need a new grill top.
Yeah.
And they just come out, swap it out, barely even say anything.
So definitely go to Luida's bar. Even if you're not a fan of Dragon Quest like that much, just the food and the drinks there were just so good.
It was great. It was actually one of the classiest bars we had been to there. And, we went to some nice joints. And this was awesome.
Definitely.
And like we said, there were many other things to do. We went to model stores. We went to a hedgehog and owl cafe. We even did eat at a maid cafe. There's plenty of things to do. Museums.
We did see a traditional koto and Japanese flute performance.
Oh, yes, that was marvelous.
Yes. So you have to indulge in all of the things Japan has to offer. Don't get stuck in Akihabara, even though it is a lovely place to be.
If those Sega arcades had hotel rooms, I could have stayed there. Spend all my money just on arcades. Then come back and spend all my money just on retro game stuff. But don't do it.
Yeah.
Get out, check it out. Don't be afraid. A lot of people do speak English, or at least enough, or will try and point you in some direction of where you need to go. Particularly, too, in the tourist-heavy spots.
Yeah.
So you can get by not knowing any Japanese or very little. You can get by not spending a lot of money either. Like, let's say you're on a retro game pilgrimage and you just want to spend money on consoles and games. You could stay in a cheap place. You could eat cheap food, and it's going to be far superior to, like, we're not talking McDonald's dollar menu cheap. We're talking, like, pretty good quality cheap.
Yeah, for like $3 or $4.
Inexpensive.
Yeah, for like $3 or $4, you could get a full
satisfying
meal from a convenience store, and it's like it's good quality. It's not like convenience stores in the United States where you're getting something that you're like, oh, I must be eating pure salmonella right now. I don't know.
You could use your phone apps to help you find your way. In a lot of the districts, they had large interactive city map screens to help you navigate the trains and subway systems. You can do it.
Mm-hmm. Google Maps.
The flight will be the worst part.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can do it.
Yeah, Google Maps is very handy because that's what I use to navigate their confusing train system. So I'd highly recommend going to Japan, experiencing all it has to offer. I absolutely fell in love with the country there. I've always dreamed about going to Japan, and there's always been a lot of hype surrounding Japan. After going there, the hype is real, the beauty is real, it's extremely clean. I would have not guessed that 35 million people live in Tokyo.
Also, as long as you have universal plugs where the one plug is not bigger than the other one, they're both the same size, they'll work in the outlets here.
Yeah, 110 volt American stuff works in Japan. Even though Japan is technically 100 volts, you could still get your stuff to work here. The only thing I didn't like about Japan was leaving.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So, with all of that said, when it comes time for me to leave Korea, my duty here, I'm going to try and fish for those few openings at the Japanese or Okinawan bases and see if my next duty station can be over there. So that about wraps it up for our video game related experiences in Japan.
Keep an eye on our YouTube channel because we took a lot of video footage while we were there, and we will be releasing videos about the arcades, about the retro game stores. I already have 2 videos up about the Container SNK Neo-Geo store and the Artnia Square Enix Cafe. So just keep an eye on the Bit War Veterans YouTube channel because we have some Japan content coming your way.
And some more in the works. But first, I have to go do 2 weeks or more training and mission. So, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of the picture again. But hopefully we'll be able to keep back up with our schedule and get back into the rhythm of producing this content for you all.
And hopefully sometime later this spring or summer, we'll be returning back to Japan. This time we're going to do Osaka, Kyoto, and a little bit of Tokyo again.
So normally we would wrap it up with our Twitter segment, but unfortunately we know we had a lot to blab about, and we want to keep it as short and sweet as we can. Stay tuned to our Twitter at BitWarVets, and you can reach Meow Ching at
Meow Ching.
Also check out the YouTube at youtube.com/BitWarVeterans.
And please, if you enjoyed this podcast, tell your friends about it. We would love to have a bigger audience and definitely spread the love word of mouth. It definitely makes a difference because this is our labor of love.
Thank you all for those who are listening, and we will see you guys next time. Bit War Veterans.
Shush!
And if you made it this far, then that means you
and we are Bit
War Veterans! Yong out!